You don't wake up one day and not recognize yourself. It's not like that. It happens at a very slow, quiet pace. It's a series of small compromises. And let it go here. And it's not that important anyway there. A moment where you almost say something true and then you don't. And then you don't again. And then you stop almost saying it at all. And inside the 1,000 tiny agreements you've made to keep things stable over time, you realize what you wanted is a faded memory, sometimes not a memory at all. This is the slow fade. Welcome to Laughed Without Losing Yourself. I'm your host, Penelope Mogulianidi, and this podcast is for the woman who is capable, responsible, and outwardly composed, but privately tired from caring more than anyone sees. The woman who knows something shifted inside her, but can't quite pinpoint when it happened. If that's you, you are in the right place. In this episode, we are not going to talk about your relationship being broken. We are not going to talk about him not trying. This episode is not about bad communication or lack of effort. This episode is about something much quieter and much more significant. This is about what happens to your sense of self when you spend years prioritizing stability over authenticity. When you learn slowly that keeping the peace is more important than keeping yourself. When you discover that being easy to be with has become the same as not existing at all, you have disappeared. This is your pattern, and it is not a personal flaw. And this pattern has a very particular shape. It whispers. It feels reasonable at every single step. You justify it. And by the time you see it as it is, you are not sure which version of yourself is even real anymore. The one you show the world or the one you've hidden so well that even you can't find her. Let me name what the slow fade actually looks like. It often starts with something small. Maybe he prefers you a certain way. Maybe the family has certain expectations. Maybe you learned early in the relationship that your opinions were disruptive. So you learned to hold them lightly, to propose them as questions instead of statements. Do you think maybe we could, instead of I want to? That's how it begins. You soften your language. You second guess your preferences. You start choosing restaurants you are fine with instead of restaurants you actually want. You say yes to plans when you mean no. You laugh at jokes that don't land for you just to ease someone else's need to be funny. These are tiny. Individually are insignificant, but here's when the pattern becomes expensive. These tiny agreements stack. You are not aware you're making them. Each one feels manageable. Each one feels like the price of love, the price of responsibility, or the price of being a good partner. Each one feels reasonable. But they compound. You may notice it when you are asked a simple question. What do you want for dinner? And you genuinely don't have a preference. And this happens because you've spent so long fulfilling others' needs that your own preferences have become background noise. You may notice it when you catch yourself explaining or defending or softening something you've said when no one asked you to. You are doing the work of making yourself safe before anyone's even challenged you. You may notice it when you are alone and realize that the voice in your head, that internal dialogue, has started sounding like him, like your mother, like the version of you that says yes to everything. The part nobody talks about is how normal this becomes. Because to the outside world, you are a responsible, mature, strong woman. Inside, it feels like erasure, like you are not that important. So you start changing her piece by piece. And somehow you become both the director and the audience of your own fading. Your own needs become a question mark instead of a statement. Your own preferences become something you are not quite sure are important to have and honor. And that is the slow fade. What causing this isn't because one day you woke up and found yourself weak or codependent. The root of all this was a thought that led you to believe and take the necessary actions as a result, which led you to conclude that being yourself was expensive, that your authentic self created friction, that your needs were a burden, that love meant shrinking to fit. Maybe you learn it from a parent who couldn't handle your fullness, who needed you to be small so their anxiety wouldn't spike. So you learned early your bigness is dangerous, your wanting is threatening, your realness costs you love. Or maybe you learn it in a relationship where your honesty was met with defensiveness, withdrawal, or disappointment. And over time, you made a calculation. It's safer to edit yourself than to risk the silence that comes after truth. Or maybe you learn it by watching the women around you, mothers, aunts, friends, who sacrificed themselves and called it love, who disappeared and called it maturity. And you decided that was the way to do it right. This pattern is not random. It's intelligent. It gave you a false sense of safety. It earned you belonging. It prevented rupture. What protected you back then may now be costing you. Because here's what happens when you practice self-abandonment long enough. You don't just lose your preferences. You lose the part of you that knew how to want. You don't just edit your truth. You start to question whether you ever had one. You don't just accommodate others. You start to resent them for needing accommodation, while simultaneously making sure they never, ever know about your resentment. But the one person you resent more is yourself. Deep down, you know that suppressing your needs and feelings as inconvenient is costing you way more than you are willing to acknowledge, and it's killing you. What is important to understand is this: the relationship may not be the only thing that went quiet. You may have gone quiet inside it. And it is not because your partner made you, not because he demanded it, but because over time you learned that your aliveness, your opinions, your desires, your frustration, your needs was harder on the system than your compliance. So you made yourself smaller, quieter, more manageable. And the person who suffered most from that choice was you. You can love someone deeply and still resent them for the version of yourself you've become. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. You can be committed to the relationship while also grieving the self you've left behind with it. That's the sign that something inside you, something true and real and worth honoring, has been asking for years to come back. I know what I am talking about because I found myself exactly in the position I just described to you. After 15 years of a happy marriage, one conversation with my husband changed everything. He told me that he wanted out. The problem, he didn't like the person I had become. Change, and I will think about it. One statement, and my whole world came crumbling down. Anger, resentment, and pain. God, it was so much pain. I grieved and blamed myself for months and months. I coached myself and got coached. I judged myself harshly. But over time, I've realized how much I've changed as a person to accommodate my husband's preferences and well-being. I used to love dancing, but I stopped because he didn't. I used to love going to concerts and going out with friends to listen to Greek music and dance. But because he wasn't into it and I didn't want to go without him, I convinced myself it was okay for me not to go. I convinced myself I didn't need it. Can you see the pattern here? And when he told me to change, and I will think about it, the spell broke because I realized I had changed for him. He didn't ask for me or demanded this change. It was my decision, which, as already discussed, came from the belief that it was in my duty to put other people's needs and preferences first. So, what does it look like to shift out of this pattern? The old identity says, I must stay small enough to be loved. My needs are the problem. My job is to manage everyone's comfort, including my own discomfort. The new identity I want you to adopt practices something different. The new identity says, I can be honest and still belong. My preferences matter. My truth might create friction, and that friction is not evidence that I am selfish. It's evidence that I'm finally embracing who I am, unapologetically. And it's okay for some people not to like me. This doesn't mean you become difficult. It doesn't mean you stop caring about other people's experiences. It means you stop abandoning yourself to protect them from the reality of who you are. It means you start to believe, really believe, that the person who loves you wants to know the real you. He can handle your honesty, that your needs are not threats. And if he can't, if your honesty does create a rupture, then you've gotten important information. and you have a choice to make. But you make it from clarity, not from fear. I want to give you a tool to begin interrupting the slow fade. I call it the pattern pause. A simple tool, but it requires honesty. The pattern pause has 3 steps, and you can do it right now or whenever you notice yourself accommodating, softening, or editing yourself. Step 1, notice the moment. You are in a conversation or maybe making a decision or about to say something, and you feel the impulse to soften it, to make it smaller, to frame it as a question instead of a statement, to apologize before you've even said anything. Just notice. Don't judge it. Don't fix it yet. Just notice the impulse. Step 2, ask yourself, am I doing this because it's true and important, or because I am protecting someone else from my honesty? This is the crucial question. This is a very important question because sometimes we soften for good reasons. We are being considerate. We are reading the room. We are being kind. That's different. That's discernment. But sometimes we soften because we are afraid. And it is important to know the difference. Step 3, give yourself 10 seconds to say the truer version, not the harsh version, not the version that's designed to hurt or provoke, only the version that's actually honest. And I want to give you an example of how this works. You and your partner, imagine that you and your partner are making plans for the weekend. He suggests something, you feel the urge to say, "Oh, that sounds good. Whatever works for you, honey." But actually, you don't want to do that. You want something different. So we go to the 3 steps. Step 1, you notice the impulse to say yes when you mean no. Step 2, you ask, am I saying yes because I care about his feelings or because I am afraid of disappointing him? In this case, in this scenario, is the second one. And the final step, step 3, instead to say yes, you say, I actually have something else in mind. Can we talk about both options? That's it. Nothing aggressive, nothing punishing, just honesty. And here's what happens usually. When you practice the pattern pause, you start to remember what it feels like to trust your own voice, to know what you actually want, to be in a relationship where you don't have to compromise to belong. Before we close, I want to leave you with a question. And as always, I want you to think about it. And also, don't try to answer it quickly. Where are you calling it love when it's actually self-abandonment? Where have you learned to disappear and call it devotion? Where have you stopped asking for what you need and called it maturity? That's where the slow fade lives, and that's where you get to start choosing differently. If this episode named something you've been living but couldn't fully explain, if you found yourself recognizing the slow fade in your own life, I want you to know that this is exactly the pattern we work with. It's not something you have to figure it out alone. In a reset session, we look at where you've stopped advocating for yourself. We examine what's been costing you. And more importantly, we map out the first clean shifts that bring you back to your own truth. This isn't about fixing your relationship or becoming a different person. It's about remembering who you were before you learned to disappear and bringing her back. If you are ready to do the work, the link to book a reset session is in the show notes. And if you are not quite ready yet, but you want clarity on where you are overfunctioning and what it's costing you, take the burnout assessment. It's free and it's designed specifically for women like you. You don't need to figure this out alone. Thank you for being here. I will speak to you next week.